Message from General Pepper. Priority 1. We need your help, Star Fox. Andross has declared war. He's invaded the Lilat system and is trying to take over Corneria. Our army alone can't do the job. Hurry, Star Fox. Welcome to training mode. Let's practice the basics.
And hello everyone, it is your favourite randomised gaming host for this video, Random Gamer Riven. Now some of you will recognise this video. This is our previously released Star Fox 64 long play where we did the normal route. However, as Nintendo changed their rules, I'm re-uploading this video with me commentating over it. To give you a little rundown of the games, I probably should commentate a lot more on some of the playthrough videos to explain what we do and how we do it, seeing as I have been a professional tester in my career, part of the games industry, and I've also worked on numerous titles, and I also understand quite a bit about design of games, so it's always good to actually have someone who actually industry perspective explaining design. So, as you're aware, Star Fox 64 was of course released in 1997, and it probably remains the best installment in the Star Fox series. That or the Wii U one, I think, if it wasn't for the control issue, would be one of the best installments. The second Star Fox game, as you're aware, which was recently released after about 20 years being unreleased, just turned out to be a very good title, and the original, I think the original three were probably three of the best games released in the series. After that it sort of went by the by for a number of years. But this one, interestingly, with hindsight, it's clear Nintendo ripped off an awful lot of the design from the second game and didn't credit Argonauts for it, so naughty Nintendo. You do sometimes wonder a little bit about Shohei Miyamoto's input into games, seeing as he seemed to steal ideas and not necessarily do as well as he could do. It was his suggestion for Star Fox to come outside the R-Wing, and somebody said, "No, Miyamoto, no, that's not a good idea," but he never seemed to do that, and we had some really horrible hybrid games like Dinosaur Planet, which was just, what was he thinking? But then I have actually heard in the past that Miyamoto is allegedly not that nice a person to work with, and perhaps not as good a designer as he makes out, so there's a tidbit of information. So of course I have to say that's all alleged because I've never actually met or worked with Miyamoto. Well, tell lie, I did see him once. I was actually at one of the signings where he was present in the UK. Unfortunately we arrived too late to actually get our autograph signed by him. That was many years ago. Or get his autograph, I should say. But this is the training section for Star Fox 64, as you can see. And I should say this is being played on the Wii U. Now, although there aren't a huge number of N64 games on the Wii U, they do look vastly better on the Wii U than they do on the N64, and even if you've got a HDMI modded N64, these Wii U ones look better. So, as some people have said in the past, the HDMI modding does make them a little bit too sharp, whereas these Wii U ones seem to get all the balancing just right and all the edging just about right. They're never going to be 100% because they are technically emulation, but I do prefer these Wii U versions of the games to even the originals these days, and they are fantastic. Although sadly we did have a few PAL instances here in the Europe releases, which was a bit annoying. But there are if there were more games on the Wii U shop, I would actually suggest just get a Wii U over an N64, but sadly there aren't actually that many. I think there's only about 20 in total, and the N64 had about 200 games released on it. So the cooling drop was just one of the many mechanics that was added for Star Fox 64. I mean, there aren't a huge amount of changes. The biggest changes was back then was the all range mode, but as anyone who knows who's played Star Fox 2, the all range mode was actually from that and not this. But at the time, because we'd never played Star Fox 2, everyone thought, oh hey, they've got this cool new mode. Well, actually it was actually stolen from Star Fox 2, and they didn't credit Argonauts, the guys at Argonaut, for it, which is why Argonaut and Nintendo always seem to me, they seem to have quite a bitter split based on what I've read over the years. But that's me just making a bit of conjecture, so I may be wrong on that. I was about to say, this is still a very, very impressive looking and playing game. I think for N64 games it's actually aged pretty well considering the visual style at the time. Some N64 games have aged quite badly, but I think this one, they slightly stylised the design of the ships, and because spaceships are not real world things, they don't age as much as, say, something like a real world person visual. Certainly a polygon 3D person in the N64 doesn't look anywhere near as good as sort of a ship, which you can imagine these sort of slender, sleeker designs with less polygons, and they sort of work. So I think graphically this has aged better than a lot of other N64 games. So I should say this was developed and published by Nintendo, and Star Fox 64 was originally released in '97,
Corneria,
certainly in Europe and the US. Called Lylant Wars in Europe due to a licensing name concern. There was also some concern over the fact that Germans pronounced Star Fox Starvox, I believe. And back then, for those who don't know about the European structure, Nintendo still do have their base in Germany, and the German division was seen as the most profitable and the biggest at the time. So at the time, Nintendo always led on with the German sort of games market. So if there were issues they had to face with the Germans games market, they would do so, and the European versions, everyone else would get to the German version, so to speak. So I'll just let this intro roll out.
Andross has again invaded the Lylat system. General Pepper has turned to a new Star Fox team headed by Fox McCloud to save Corneria and free the Lylat system once again.
And here we go with the routes. Now, I did pretty much an easy playthrough on this. I have actually in the past done every single route, done them on all the difficulties, got the alternative title screens, unlocked the different characters and them running around on foot in the multiplayer by getting all the medals. There were basically hidden medal requirements that you could get. Basically, once you beat the game and get all the medals, I think it seems to call you unlock hard mode. Once you beat hard mode, you can unlock all the medals in hard mode, and you unlock some extra things. There's alternative title screens, although one of the alternative title screens I didn't actually like the final one. I much preferred the original one or one of the in-between title screens. And once you change title screen, you couldn't then change it back.
Check your G diffuser system.
Check your G diffuser system. Yes, that is always a good one. I once had a friend joke to another when his router was playing out, because he wasn't that tech savvy, you need to check your G diffuser. So there's a good joke if you ever want to play on someone who's not that tech savvy. Say, check your G diffuser.
I see him up ahead. Let's rock and roll.
And here we are with Mission 1 Corneria Army Base. This in itself, Star Fox 64 was kind of like an update, remake or reimagining of the original game. So there are a lot of similarities between this and quite a few of the original Star Fox bosses reappear in this N64 outing looking much, much better. And that's actually the case in this first stage. There are two bosses. One is the hidden boss that you get from saving Falcon and flying under all the arches. There's actually the boss from the original game, and then there's a new boss if you take the standard route. Or I should say Falco, not Falcon.
This is horrible. Everybody stay alert.
There's also a wealth of hidden power-ups in the game, so although like with the originals you don't want to lose your wings, you do want to grab as many power-ups. Again, there's only 3 shot upgrades as with the original game, but it's nice to actually have the strongest shot, as it does make things slightly easier. And the rings heal health, and there's bonus score, and you can get hidden bombs and basically bomb power-ups. There's also a few killing certain enemies to drop hidden bomb power-ups. As a game, I think this is one that really was... The N64 was really the first console that could properly do a Star Fox game in the way I think Nintendo had originally envisioned it. The SNES, as nice as the SNES games were, the frame rate was a serious issue on them. And the performance and the visual, and that was due to the limitations of the FX chip. And I do feel that the developers, I imagine, probably went to town on this one. Now, just to make a quick note, hopefully at some point we will have the original video unlisted, so you'll be able to watch it from here by clicking on it. At the minute there's a slight content ID issue on that video where someone has incorrectly matched it by a YouTube system, so I need to sort that out.
Follow me, Fox. Falco, where you going? I found the target.
Yep, so I did actually go the hidden boss way. I couldn't remember if I did go the hidden boss way. So yeah, I say Falcon and went under all the arches. And here we go with the hidden boss route. I think although I do the normal ending, I think quite a bit of this playthrough I do the hard route. Or the left side route. There's basically you can do 3 routes, but in this one, unlike the original game, which technically had 3 endings, you couldn't really swap between routes in the original game. In this one, there's much more manoeuvrability between the routes, but there's only 2 effectively endings. There's the standard ending, and there's the sort of harder ending. So I do like the lovely reflection there on the ship as you're going over the water. And yeah, this is the original boss from the first game.
I've got a present for you.
And it must be, it's nice to actually have the characters much more chatty in this one. It was nice for the enemies insulting one another along with the goodies, so that was always good fun. And something I'm really glad they added. It gave a bit more character to everyone with them sort of hurling insults at one another before they face off. So like the original one, you have to shoot off the 3 pods first. One pod fires rockets and the other 2 launch troops. Or double rocket launch and troop thing to the... And then once we shoot off those, the main pod then comes at us and we just got to shoot that. Now I think on the audio front, even though I'm talking over a lot of the audio, I do think the audio was really good quality, and this had a really, really good soundtrack. The original composer didn't do it, but it's still a very good soundtrack, but it's a bit more rock and roll than the original game. The original game had a bit more mystique with it, and I think Star Fox, the original game, I like that mystique soundtrack in the original one, although because they had a slightly different composer, you never quite got some of those tunes again. A lot of the tunes that appeared in the later games all come from this N64 outing.
We're Star Fox.
You'll never defeat Andross!
And there goes the first boss. I do love that old classic, "You'll never defeat Andross," that sort of classic Saturday morning's cartoon sort of, we're the goodies and we've just beaten the villain.
All aircraft report.
You did it! I was worried for a moment.
So it's a great introductory stage. As I mentioned, that really is like a reimagining of the original stage from Star Fox. If you compare the two, they've got some very similar aspects, but the Star Fox 64 version does look so much better compared to the original. And you feel like you're flying through the ruins of Corneria. So yeah, do take the left route, and this is Sector Y.
We're under attack. Help us out here.
I'm on my way.
Good luck.
So I must admit, this one reminds me a bit of the battle at the end of Return of the Jedi, where the fact you've got all the ships facing off against one another. I think they really went for a proper space battle this time around. They tried to do that in the original with some of the stages, but I think there's, again, the limitation of the SNES meant you only had a handful of ships on screen, but this one really does feel like you're flying through various fighting fleets. And I love the introduction there as you get the ships sort of firing at the oncoming enemy troops, but still getting blown up in the process. You feel like you're coming in to rescue the Corneria fleet, and they do replay this theme in the later games as well. Certainly the Wii U one had a very similar thing. The Wii U had some ships that also very distinctly resembled Star Destroyers, even more so than the earlier games. And this is a very brief hint of the Death Star trench run as you fly over this ship. So the charge shot is actually a really interesting mechanic they added in for the N64 game. It wasn't in the original, but one of the cool factors, and based on the sort of medal system and the scoring system, is the fact that the charge shot blows up multiple enemies in one go, and tactically using it enables you to maximise your score. And you'll see, if you ever see like top score players, they're just constantly firing off charge shots to get combo shots to take out as many enemies in one go. And that was a really nice mechanic there. In the scoring mechanic, certainly like killing all the enemies and trying to get the medals, I think was a really good mechanic they added in for this N64 sequel. It made you challenge this one much more than I found the original. The original didn't necessarily replay that much, but this one I just remember we got to get when we were younger, trying to get all the medals, just keep replaying the stages, redoing them till you got that top score, and the amount of times you'd redo you'd get like a point off the sort of medal score, and you'd be like, damn it, and you just keep trying. I really enjoyed that. I think that was a really nice mechanic they had in for the N64 one. But the charge shot's a great way of dealing with enemies as well, without having to use a bomb, because the bomb's the other area thing, but you only have a limited number of bombs. But the charge shot's a really nice mechanic that I think was well implemented. You got the Landmaster tank in this one, and the submarine as well, and we do show the submarine in this playthrough run. I do like the submarine stage. There's only one submarine stage. I believe there were 2 Landmaster tank stages in this one. Although my memory is perhaps not as good as it should be, so someone may correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. We just got one up there. There were a few places to get hidden one-ups as well.
Location confirmed. Sending supplies.
So yeah, tactically placing this charge shot, especially if you're a group of squad of ships coming towards you, always aim for the centre one or the first one, so that way the charge shot would wipe them all out. And there was also a score mechanic for killing the bosses really quickly. You'd get basically the bosses would give you a score depending on how quickly you killed them. So if you went into the boss and killed them really quickly, you'd get a plus 10 or plus 50, something. Basically, if you took ages, you'd get a very minimal score from them, but if you killed them very, very quickly, you would get the max score from them, so it was worth learning to quickly take down the bosses.
Good job. Keep up the good work.
I think that might be hit plus 5 if I took him out really quickly. Might be wrong. I'm just trying to remember this. I can't quite remember all the aspects of the scoring system. Plus 3 again. I only get the boss here. So yes, this boss has very much a Gundam mecha inspired feel. And I suspect very much that was what they were going for with the design. And this one you do like me here, where you basically go the other side of the screen, line him up, and then just blast him for as long as possible, because the bigger distance between you, the more you can shoot it, the longer you can shoot him. Because if you try and turn around quickly, then you don't have that lot of time before you pass over one another.
Out from the ship.
Although strangely the radar is not as accurate as it should be.
What's wrong? Is that it? Cocky little freak! Cocky little freak!
Report in.
Yes, so we're heading for Aquila, so that means we're heading for the submarine next.
Your skills have improved, Fox. I guess you're good for something.
Star Fox, I want you to take out the enemy bioweapon.
Yes, sir. Deploy the Blue Marine.
Good luck.
Here we go with Terror from the Deep. Or is that Terror of the Deep? So the Great Fox was actually another, again it was a really nice thing that they introduced the Great Fox. This design's actually from the N64 version, but the Great Fox did make its first appearance in, as we now know, the defunct or never released Star Fox 2.
I'm gonna check out the bioweapon.
Now this was actually quite a cool stage, the submarine one, actually quite a tricky one, and sadly it was the only stage using the submarine, so it was quite a really nice side thing. It took us quite a while to originally get here. Remember when I originally first got the N64 version, once we did it, it was like, yeah, we got the sub, this is awesome. Because it's such a nice change of pace. It's a shame Star Fox didn't actually use more vehicles for a few of the missions. I think it would have been nice just to mix up the gameplay a little bit more. Certainly been nice if the sub was used a bit more often. In fact, the sub doesn't appear in many Star Fox games at all.
Looks like the pollution has started.
Awful.
probably should at some point do a playthrough of the
Wow! Look at that! It's beautiful!
Wii U version as well, although the downside of the Wii U version is actually capturing the actual... I'll need to do a mic audio and then re-record it over because, of course, the Wii U one had this weird bug, or a weird gameplay mechanic where the actual voices only came out on the gamepad, which was just a really silly decision by Nintendo. One of many silly decisions with the Wii U, in fact even the Star Fox series. It's weird, this was such a high point in the Star Fox series, and yet Nintendo didn't copy over this high point gameplay. They should have kept to this format, but they didn't. They kept just doing weird things, and to me this still remains in many aspects the pinnacle of the series, Star Fox 64. It just gets everything so right, and yet for some reason Nintendo didn't seem to realise that and just tried to add just bizarre mechanics in some of their later installments, something that they didn't do with some of their other franchises. I mean, they didn't really try and add bizarre mechanics into Zelda. I know there's one or two Zeldas that weren't as good as some other ones, but they never really had that bizarre mechanics. I mean, even Mario has largely stuck to the same format. I think even only Sunshine really had the slightly odd thing where Mario had the jetpack sort of water spray on his back, but even that was a nice sort of mechanic.
Keep shooting! We've got lots of torpedoes!
You're the best, Slippy.
Thanks, Peppy!
This thing will never hold together.
So I think the general rule is basically shoot very quickly on this stage. I seem to recall you need to shoot the torpedoes rapidly when they came in and shoot the clams when as soon as they open up to max the score. You tend to have to fire a lot of rockets. This stage is actually more trickier than it looks. I mean, I'm pretty much a veteran Star Fox player, so I'd probably make this stuff look relatively easy, but this stage I do remember giving me an awful lot of trouble the first few times I played it. And I still wouldn't consider this a perfect run because we didn't do the hard ending.
I found the bioweapon.
And the boss is this weird sort of clan monster.
Enemy field analyzed!
Aim for the 2 columns.
Fire a homing torpedo!
So basically you shoot the sort of pods off, and then I believe you have to rocket the them once they go hard, and then that does the boss an awful lot of damage. And then once you've damaged it enough, the eye then opens up and then you have to shoot it in the eye. You want to shoot the sort of pods on the top to stop the slugs coming out. All the sort of worm things it launches at you. Quite a few bosses have in this have a 2-stage thing. Before you can actually damage them, you have to destroy the necessary components, and then once you destroy the necessary components, then you can start damaging it. So you can see there, we can now go for the actual eye itself now that we've damaged the core. Although often you have a limited window to actually damage the core, so you need to really maximise the damage when you can do.
Yippee! You did it!
We're preparing to dock. Thanks, Flip. Blue Marine came through. Flip is not such a screw-up after all.
Thanks a lot, Peppy.
I'll take the sky any day.
Cease, Falco. You too.
Actually, what was one of the nicer touches is the fact they kept a lot of the planets the same, and they've actually used different planets across the different games. But often you'll see quite a few of the planets from the original game reappear in the various later games. Some will miss an installment and then appear in the next one, so there's a nice sort of theme, and they've got a huge raft of worlds in the Lilat solar system. I believe it's actually the Lilat solar system, hence the Lilat Wars alternative title. Although these days everyone calls it Star Fox, and the original renames of Starwing and Lilat Wars have since been long since forgotten in Europe.
I can't believe they did.
What a jump.
I hear you, Flippy.
Look up for the searchlight.
So this is Zonus, the rather murky, slimy world. That's one of the things each of the stages do encapsulate a very different feel. In this one I think you have to blow out all the searchlights. Lots of the missions had, it's interesting, lots of the missions had alternative routes, and you had to actually discover, unlike the original which pretty much set you on, depending on the difficulty, you picked which path you would go. The only exception being was the black hole or the wormhole could change your paths.
Follow your father's example, Pop.
In this one, many stages have special requirements to go the various routes.
Closing in on them, Falco. Take the right leg forward. I have the left.
Kill certain amounts of enemies, etc, etc. And just a quick note, this is Kat, one of the cooler cameo characters who makes an appearance in this one. Her and Bill are two of the assist characters that appear throughout the story. And her and Bill appear on certain missions. I don't recall them ever appearing together, but if you did certain missions in certain orders, they will appear, and they can appear in the ending, as I recall.
I've got somebody on my tail. You try to damage my... Mess with me and you'll get scratched.
Aim for the runner, Pop.
This stage actually reminds me of, is it Florida on the hard path in the original game? We had the sort of creatures jumping out of the sea. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have to shoot all the searchlights. I think if you miss one, that's one route's for shooting all the searchlights on this one, one route's for failing to shoot one of the searchlights.
Enemy tanker.
I think one of the hardest routes is the infamous train one, where you've got to shoot all the switches so the train crashes into the depot. But at some point I probably would like to do a full sort of playthrough video where we cover all the points and go through every single stage, both endings, everything. Like a full-on marathon sort of playthrough guide video that covers everything. And also just keeps it all for preservation as well, because a lot of games aren't particularly well documented, and often even playthrough videos, they'll just do a segment of it and not actually cover the full thing and show you, you know, what if you make mistakes. They don't often, a lot of playthrough videos are just people doing mechanical near perfect runs that aren't necessarily that fun to watch because they aren't realistic. The people who spent A, months practicing, or B, people who have used save states, which is the case for a lot of the channels.
Back off, Pop.
But you either spend months practicing to get a perfect run or basically use save states, and that doesn't necessarily give you full reflection, because often if you're doing a sort of perfect run or a speedy run, you're missing out on huge parts of the game because you're deliberately trying to force the game forward as fast as possible without actually showing you all the different routes, maybe the side rooms that just go nowhere, etc, etc. And there's things like that. If you really want to do a full-on sort of proper playthrough, you need to cover everything, in my opinion.
Something's coming from the sea.
And while I'd love to do flawless runs on a lot of the games, and I can do them, I just don't have the time to invest in actually, because if we were doing that, you'd be getting a video out once a month. Though this was actually one of the more troublesome bosses. You really have to watch that ball when it gets hurtled towards you, because that does an awful lot of damage. I think it can even smash your wings, as I recall. This one gives you a lot of bombs, because I think initially parts of him you can only damage with bombs. He's also a great way to farm bombs. Because I think his armour's too strong that you actually need bombs. I think you've hit the turrets. At this point I think I'm hitting the wrong place. Oh, that's where I've got to shoot the scope at this point. And this is where you've got to be really careful and use the sort of whizzing to avoid. You stay one side and then when he says fire you sort of quickly fly to the other side. I mean, there's all the infamous barrel roll quotes as well, although the roll that Star Fox actually does where they say barrel roll is not actually a barrel roll, it's a different roll in Air Force play or airplane manoeuvres.
His armor's up! Use bomb plasma!
So a lot of these bosses are very patternized. This one, again, he can actually see that even once you damage off the sections, you can actually re-grab them with the crane and do them. And most of these bosses in Star Fox games, it's just a case of learning their patterns, learning where they shoot, learning how to predict their shots and outmaneuver them, or whether you can shoot them, and then just targeting the weak points. This one's actually quite an easy boss. But you have to be a little bit careful because he can take you down quite heavily with that hammer. I think he can break your wings. Yeah, I've lost my wing there. Oh, so hit +5, so that was not a fast run on that boss, and I was going to say that took over a lot longer than I should have done.
All aircraft report.
I'm fine, I'm fine.
Everything's A-OK. Cat, where'd you go?
So yeah, I think one of my favourite quotes from Peppy is the one where he says, "I saw my light flash before my eyes." I think that has to be my favourite quote in the Star Fox series. That's if his ship is near death when you get you get to the end of the round. Well, annoyingly, they don't repair any damage unless they get defeated, in which point they go back to the Great Fox, repair up, miss a mission, then come back the mission after. Because you see there it says PSF in the bottom, and that means Peppy, Slippy and Falco all survived. And if you want the best score, I think for every medal you actually need all 3 of your wingmen to survive every stage. Yeah, so this is where I changed course because I didn't do the hard route, which actually a bit to my shame. I should have redone the hard route with this one on this playthrough, I think, which is so it make it a bit quicker because the one of the stages is rather tricky.
It'll be a piece of cake, General.
Okay, Macbeth, named after the Shakespeare play, I'm guessing. But this is one of my favourite stages. We've got the Landmaster tank in this one, and we have the train.
I spot the train.
Now, just try and remember if I blew up the train or not in this run. This is actually the first time you do it, figuring out where all the switches are is actually surprisingly tricky. So this is not a stage you're likely to perfect the first time around. Basically there's two the endings. One, you blow up the supply depot with the train crashing into it. In that case you don't fight the boss because the train is the boss and it crashes, or you don't direct it into the supply depot, at which point you then have to fight the boss.
Starting without me.
So yeah, Cat won't always appear on this stage, it depends on the route you go, but that's a nice touch. If you get Cat in the one mission, she'll then crop up in the next mission and help out, but you only meet Cat or Bill if you go the various routes. I think it's actually possible to go a route where you meet neither, but it does depend on the way you play. And I think there's like 2 stages each they both appear on, but you need to... Well, I think there might be like 4 stages or something, but basically I know Bill's on 2 stages initially without the additional help stages they appear on, but you need to know which stages they are. It's nice to have some characters other than just the Star Fox team, although I will say it's a shame that they didn't carry over the 2 characters from Star Fox 2, the female leopard character and Pooch character. Both of them were really nice characters. It was a real shame they didn't reappear in the series because they did add a nice female touch to the series, and it was a bit of a shame Nintendo didn't reuse them. In fact, we've only recently officially seen them since the re-release of the second game on SNES, or release of it, somewhat delayed release. So this stage I think it's quite good fun with the train, although there's an awful lot of rocks you end up shooting, and shooting rocks isn't actually that fun, but they do hinder your progress. It's quite fun to shoot the train though. And yeah, unlike the R-Wing, you really have to be good with the jumps on this because of course the Landmaster cannot fly, so you have to, with the metal bars, you have to jump over. In fact, playing the Landmaster is actually a bit harder than playing as the R-Wing. You actually have to fly up to the checkpoint as well. I think it's possible to actually miss a few of the checkpoints if you just drive straight on the ground, the Landmaster. But yes, it's kind of ironic, I must admit, Star Fox 64 plays better on the Wii U than Star Fox Zero did. Due to the fact Star Fox Zero used Nintendo's weird Pashon for motion controls. Fortunately, that Pashon I think has largely died a death now because people realised it just was not a good way to control and play games, and motion controls just weren't up to the standard. But it's such a shame Nintendo just seemed unable to patch out or give the option, because motion controls should just be an option. If you don't want to use motion controls, you shouldn't have to use them. And especially because not everyone can actually use motion controls. You've got certain disabilities, you're going to really struggle to use controls like motion control ones, and it's much easier to use a sort of standard pad. I mean, certainly there is actually sort of market for sort of one-handed joypads and things like that as well, but it's something that I think Nintendo are a bit slightly short-sighted with some of their design at times. So yes, you can see that I didn't do the hit all the switch. Oh no, there I do hit all the switches. So you trigger the boss, but we hit all the switches. So we are going to see the boss take an unfortunate, the train take an unfortunate path.
No! Get the plane! I say, stop it!
Yes, there's the hit plus 50 for blowing up the train this way. And there goes the depot. I didn't think I hit on the switches on this route. Obviously, no, I did.
All aircraft report.
But yeah, if you're struggling with where the switches are, rewatch this segment on stage in this video, and you'll see where they all are.
I'm sure we heard him this time.
You're pretty good, Tiger. See you again.
Now it's our turn to kick some tail.
So yes, the cumulative total is quite a nice tally because at the end it shows you your full score. I've seen some absolutely insane playthroughs where people have killed like 10, just so many troops. Even, I think my best is a couple of thousand. Well, into the thousands, I should say. There are sort of you get General Pepper say various things at the end depending on how many you shot down. I have a feeling I'm going to change stage again. Yeah, I did it so we could fight the Star Fox. So really, the yellow, if you notice the path colours change, blue sort of implies easier stages, yellow implies medium difficult stages, and red implies the harder stages, although they're not really that much different in difficulty. Overall, I think Star Fox 64 is a really well balanced game, and
Okay, guys, destroy all barriers.
probably betterly balanced than the original Star Fox, which got quite tricky in a few areas, and sometimes the balancing and the sort of areas you had to shoot some of the targets didn't feel quite right. And this, as everyone knows, is the first mission where we see Star Wolf turn up. At least on this run. Star Wolf can appear in 2-3 missions. And this is one of the later missions you can first encounter him in. You can also encounter him on the surface of Venom and one of the other bases as well. And you can also encounter him multiple times, again, depending on the playthrough you do. So that was a really nice thing about Star Fox 64. There is a slight dynamic story with the route you take and who you fight and which stages you go, and that was one of the things I really liked about this, the fact that technically no two playthroughs would ever be exactly the same, at least unless you were following exactly the same route. So there's a really great replayability to this that, as I said before, the original Star Fox on SNES lacked.
Hey, the force field is disappearing. Looks like we've got company. Playtime is over, Star Fox.
I think I'll torture you for a while.
Daddy screamed real good before he... You'll be sorry you crossed us.
Yes, Andrew. Interestingly, Andrew is actually the one character that was changed from Star Fox 2. There was originally a sort of chameleon character in the Star Fox team, and he only appeared... Well, no, Leon's the chameleon. He's a sort of a monkey character. I don't know partly if he was removed because he's quite a rare endangered monkey and that was often being illegally trafficked into Japan, which is perhaps one of the reasons perhaps he's not included in the later ones. But yeah, basically there's, I can't remember his name, but if you see our SNES playthrough we did of the second game, there is Andrew, who is Uncle Andrew, who's basically Uncle Andros, actually Andros' nephew. This guy here, he's actually the new member of the Star Fox team, as you had the sort of monkey character who was actually removed from Star Fox 2. But again, we only relatively recently found that out because until recently Star Fox 2 had never been released. But again, it's interesting to play. My opinion has slightly changed on Star Fox 64 having played Star Fox 2 because it's clear Nintendo didn't inject that many original ideas into this game. They just pretty much merged Star Fox and Star Fox 2 into one in this one. So there's really a combination of both games. So that was the easier version of the Star Fox team. For those who don't know, if you beat them earlier, when they can turn up in this mission, they're in upgraded ships with sort of bandaged faces, etc. It's quite funny, and they're much, much harder to beat. And here we go with Venom. So yes, this is the normal ending, not the hard version.
Don't relax. We're not done yet. Time to show the monkeys who's boss. They're everywhere. These guys just keep coming. Don't go dying on me.
And like the Corneria stage at the start of the game, this one is very similar to the Venom stages from the original as well. So there is a sense of some... Can't quite get the word out. Oh, symmetry, I should say. There is a sense of symmetry with the fact that this plays very similar to the stages on Venom in the Star Fox 60, the original SNES one, and you've got similar designs here. So it feels like a progression, although technically, as I said, this game is, you can either see it as a two ways of train to thought. You can either see it as a prequel to the original Star Fox, or you can see it as basically a remake edition. There's some element that this is like Saturday morning's cartoons where they beat the villains each week and next week they're all at it again, like last week didn't happen. And the villains usually just cursing the heroes for beating them the previous week. So there is that sense of symmetry and repetitism as well. And occasionally you get a different villain on one week and then next week you're back to the classic villains. But there is that sort of 90s, sort of an 80s cartoon TV characters. So as you see there, these sections are all really literally taken straight out of the SNES one.
This brings back memories of your dad.
You can never defeat me.
Jeez Louise, what is that?
That temple gives me the creeps. What's going on? He's running away.
Stay alert.
Yes, the Running Stone Man. Interestingly, there is a boss in Res that is almost identical to this. So whether Tetsumoi, probably just mispronounced his name there, but the guy behind Res was obviously a Star Fox fan, because there's a boss very, very similar, sort of running character.
Never give up. Trust your instincts.
And this boss is a real test of your flying skills, you see there, because on top of trying to actually do the damage, you've got to avoid just about everything he's throwing at you, and then you've also got to deal with the fact that he's at range, so you really have got to hit him from everything you've got while you can.
I'll go it alone from here.
Fuck!
So yes, and here we go with the final battle with Andross. This is the normal version, so we won't be fighting his brain form. Basically the harder version has the brain form, the normal version pretty much has the mask form, which is similar to his original Star Fox. And again, a slight variant on Star Fox 2 form. The mask was in the first game. I think the mask was used primarily because they couldn't quite do sort of Andross' face. But the second game, they do kind of do it in the second game with some of the harder difficulties, I think, because again the second game has 3 different difficulties and Andross gets harder in each progressive difficulty. Although this time around he does have hands compared to the original one, but that attack with the suction one straight out of the original game will try to suck you in, munch you, and then spit all the debris back at you. Now hopefully at some point we will see a Star Fox on the Switch. I know the Wii U one didn't sell particularly well, and that's partly because of Nintendo's bizarre attempt at motion control, so I'm hopeful that we will see another one, maybe just a follow-up to Star Fox 64. But I suppose the thing with the Wii U one is if it wasn't for the motion controls, it would be a really, really, really near perfect game, and Platinum did a pretty decent job. It's just the motion controls were the sticking point. And there he goes. But yeah, we don't do the all range mode, we have to battle his brain. In this one, and you don't do the end section where you're flying out that sort of mimics a Death Star as you're trying to escape, and you have the sort of spirit of your father with the "Follow me, Fox," as you fly down the corridor.
Fox, are you okay?
And there we go, that's the end, that's the normal ending for Star Fox
Okay,
64.
I'll admit it. You did good, Fox.
Oh, 1013 kills, unlucky for some, as you would say. And it's time for the credits to roll. So I hope you enjoyed this look at Star Fox 64. I mean, for me, this still is, as I said, one of the best games, if not the best game in the series. It's great fun to play. I think it's just a shame Nintendo haven't just carbon copied it. But it has that right feel of gameplay. I mean, you did have the multiplayer mode. I think it'd be actually quite nice if you actually had two player, like split screen in the single player, because at the minute oh yeah, there's Cat flying over in the ending as well. There's old Slippy the Toad. Nice to just see the whole Star Fox team and Cat together. I can't remember if you can get Cat and Bill in the same playthrough. And of course, depending on your total at the end, depends on what General Pepper says at the end. Once you've done it, you'll get a sort of what basically you say, well, it's a steep bill or pricey, and the more kills you get, the more extravagant things. I think the top one is him sort of fainting or something because it's so expensive to hire the Star Fox team. So if you don't have Star Fox 64, at the minute the best version at present, I don't think it's been released on Switch, so it's still the Wii U. This Wii U version is a really great buy if you actually have a Wii U.
Star Fox, we are in your debt. I would be honored to have you as part of the Cornerian...
Oh no, sir. We prefer doing things our own way.
Great Fox is ready to go.
It's time for us to go now.
And here we go, the final part of the credits is the grey fox steadily appears in the background with the characters all running to their next mission. But yeah, if you haven't played it, I do recommend the Wii U version. If you know, this is the one game that if you've never played a Star Fox game, this might actually be worth buying an N64 for, because it is such a good installment in the series. I think it was one of those, I think it's almost what I'd call a Behemoth installment, where basically they make it and then nothing else quite compares up to it despite what they do. And that's sometimes the problem. Some franchises have had that where, and even some genres have had that, where you've had a title that's so much better than all the rest and no one can actually quite compete with it. And sometimes, rather than, they try to do alternative things than just building on what they did well, and that's where things went wrong. Certainly with the Star Fox series, you had Dinosaur Planet, which was a weird mishmash. It should have been a Dinosaur Planet game rather than it was turned into Star Fox Adventures, which just felt a bit awkward. You had Star Fox Armada, which Namco were all over the place with because you had so many really bland and uninteresting ground sections, and then you had some great arming sections, and then you basically had a hiatus for years. You had a couple of the DS one, which wasn't bad. But more recent times we've had the Wii U one, which said is actually a really good game, but just dogged with a really bad control system. Right, time I wrap up this video, but thank you for watching, and as you're aware we have a host of other Star Fox series playthroughs on this channel and videos of the various different games, so if you enjoy it, please do watch them, and also like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. I am Random Gamer River, signing out for now.
This is one steep bill, but it's worth it.